Welcome back to the Predictable Revenue Podcast. I'm your host, Collin Stewart, and today I'm joined by Jeff Paul. He's the founder over at Ziotag, and we're talking about his product market fit journey. Before we jump in, this episode's brought to you by our founder coaching program. Founders, let's be real. Starting a startup is hard. You're juggling product, hiring, revenue, and a million other things. And then just when things start to go right, things start to go wrong. But what if you had people that have been there, done that before in your corner to help you out navigate the chaos? That's where our founder coaching program comes in. It's founders helping founders, and our founders happen to know revenue. If that sounds interesting, give us a call. Welcome to the Predictable Revenue Podcast, where sales leaders teach you what's working for them so you can build it yourself. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a delight to be part of it.
So talk to me about where the idea and maybe the name for Ziotag came from.
Let's start with the name. The company actually started as Ziotag for visible tags, because we wanted to give you a visual roadmap of the content that was in a long format video. And when we got down to forming the company and accepting our first investment, we were at the lawyer's office in Manhattan, and we were finalizing the papers. And then the lawyer stops and looks at me and says, "Jeff, how wedded to the name Ziotag are you?" And I said, "I don't know. We got the logos, we got the kind of works. Yeah. Why do you say that?" And he said, "Well, I know the idea and I know the team. You guys are going to be wildly successful. And I have some concerns about a TV company having issues with the name Ziotag. So rather than help an attorney build his third yacht, defending the name Ziotag, is there anything else we can do?" It was at the moment, everybody was there. We were prepared to launch. So we took 5 minutes and said, what can we do? And then we cut off the VI from Ziotag, and we wound up with Ziotag. So it was to preserve our extremely limited capital that we had.
That's fantastic. Naming and branding for a startup are just this absolute black hole of it's important, but it's not so important that you need to spend 6 months on it. And in the early days, like when I was getting started, I spent way too much time thinking about it. And then every time I've kind of gone through it again and again, I've spent less and less and less time on it, and just like, let's pick something that's good enough to go with and like get going, because we don't need to spend 3 months arguing over should it be Ziotag or Ziotag. So I think 5 minutes seems about the right amount of time.
Exactly. We had momentum, and we wanted to keep the momentum going, and we'd already figured out how to spend the money that was coming in. So we said, let's just get this figured out, and we'll have a great story to tell.
So talk to me about the moments leading up to that meeting in the lawyer's office.
Sure.
What inspired you to start Ziotag in the first place?
Good. So this is my second startup. The first startup was done in 2006 to 2009. In the video space, we were manually building tables of contents around long format videos. We followed AI development, and we knew whoever figured out how to build the table of contents using AI, then you've got something that's really interesting from there. So we followed all the major vendors, and there were many starts and stops to it. And then around 2018, 2019, AI became available at a reasonable cost, so you can buy it as a utility from that point of view. And then you could build on a platform. So we decided at that moment in time, we would renew the table of contents business that we had, because we knew how to do that. And then we added the automatically building the table of contents using that AI. So it was like it was a 10-year hiatus between the first company and the second company.
Interesting. So a new enabling technology came into the space, and you thought, hey, back in the day, I don't remember much of it being referred to as AI. The term of the day was, machine learning or deep learning or neural networks. So is that what you were kind of doing, kind of built off the Google's AlphaMind or Google's Go program?
Yeah, so we're built on the Google Cloud. I'll be kind. The AI models we needed didn't exist, so we wound up building them. And it took us 3 CTOs to get it right. And then we hooked up with our current CTO, Graham Moorhead, who's a genius in AI, in particular language. He's a machine learning professor at Gonzaga University now, and he has a long history dating back to the late 90s with some of the early speech to text vendors, Nuance, like that. And he wanted to build a product like Ziotag, but didn't have the opportunity. So when we met via mutual friend, he said, I'd like to take on this challenge. So we had a good team of engineers, and he took up the leadership position there. And then so he did the architecture and then figured it all out and really led our team to build a really fabulous product.
It's amazing. And so you've got this, the idea was with Ziotag was recreating a previous business that you had sold, but with a new enabling technology. From a validation perspective, did you feel like you had it all figured out, or did you need to revalidate it and go back to the drawing board a bit?
Yes. So the world had changed in 10 years. So we needed to revalidate it. We're in the New York City area. I think it's important that best if your new first customers are local, geographically local, so that you can really establish a great relationship with them. So we found a very large educational video publisher. Think of it as like the Netflix for educational video. Every university has a subscription. Most high schools have a subscription to their service. And they had 60,000 hours of educational video that they needed tagged. And they were doing it manually, but it was very difficult and it was very expensive. Quite frankly, the accuracy, wasn't great. It wasn't consistent. So we partnered with them and we built our product, and then we refined our product based upon their needs. So that validated the offer for us. And that was Ziotag as a service. So we created the metadata to drive their videos. They happen to be based on the Kaltura video platform. And from there, we got a sense that it was really good. That was the good news. The bad news is the pandemic hit. We launched March 2020. March 15th was the beginning of the pandemic. And it took us literally about a year for the product to really start to work. And that just how long it takes from there. So by the middle of 21, early 22, we were off to the races and the product was working really well and we were getting some traction.
Amazing. And so talk to me about where that early traction came from. Like, who was your first customers? Where did you find them? Did you go back to kind of the well of, hey, we did business 10 years ago and like we've got this new iteration, or?
Yeah. So the plan was to go back to the people we knew, and then everything changes in 10 years. So the people we knew doing in 10 years, they were not doing that anymore. And that was quite a surprise. That gave us a chance to pivot. And then we reached out to our network of other professionals and said, who do you know in this space? Can you do some introductions for us? And, having I'm very active in the New York City meetup groups. There's one called Disruptive Technologists based out of the Microsoft building. And then the other one is called the New York Tech Alliance. Meetings once a month. They usually get between 250, 300 people. So I leaned on some of the relationships I had there to get introductions, of which most of those groups have good libraries of long format videos that nobody knows what's in them. And so we're able to turn both those organizations into Ziotag customers. And so I would say the power of the network and make sure that you keep your relationships fresh is really, really important.
First customers came from your network, and because we're salespeople, you were going to meetups and events in the startup community. And so that kind of helped expand the network. It parallels my story quite a bit. I'm curious about how far did that network get you? And when did that start to run out?
Well, it's still producing for me now. So the good news is it hasn't run out. Although from there, we could do our repeatable models. So we would do partnerships with transcription companies. It turns out part of our offer is you need transcription. And so we would partner with transcription companies and they would do introductions for us. They would do webinars to their customer base, because the first step of making a video searchable is doing the transcript from there. And then we would come in on the back end and we would add a lot of value to do a table of contents to it. So that was good, as well as we would go with other service providers, so event companies. If you're in New York and you're doing business events, you've got a whole bunch of 4-hour videos that you've done. And the company has spent a lot of money assembling those people in that room for that particular event, and they're spending a lot of money recording it, then they would spend just a little bit more to make it more accessible and to actually add value to that event. and we extend the runway of the event. So usually the event happens, the recordings are done, and then nobody watches them. And so
Mhm.
we help fix that problem because we made it easy to find stuff.
Interesting. And so when your network started running out in terms
Yeah.
of maybe not running out, but your network can only get you so
Right.
far,
Mhm.
right? And it's a bit of work and you reach a point where you've kind of tapped everybody you can tap.
Yeah.
And so where was your next source? Like where did it start to feel repeatable to you?
Sure. We would start to do conferences. We did conference in training
Hmm.
conferences. We did conferences in learning, meaning higher ed. And then recently, we did a podcasters conference in Washington, D.C. last August. And
Hmm.
turns out I didn't know what to expect when we decided to do it, but I was delighted with the outcome because the explosive growth of podcasting, was there, and there were so many more players there, and the need for them to make their podcast searchable and navigable was much stronger than I had anticipated. Quite frankly, the budgets were larger than I thought from there. So we signed up a couple of advisors. I have a very good advisory board that I work with, and each advisor has a vertical expertise. We had a play in conference companies like customer service companies. So we had
Hmm.
one advisor that brought us in there. We also had an advisor in higher ed that would say, if I'm a professor, happen to be out of NYU, if I'm a professor and I'm recording my lectures and I'm doing transcripts about it, I would really like to have a table of contents around it. And then we found a paradigm of Ziotag is like Cliff Notes for educational video. So
Hmm.
we do the summaries, we make it easy to navigate to get there. That inspired a new product called Zio Notes. So the same table of contents that we build around video, we can push out as HTML and we can push out as a PDF so that it would be an additional support item for our publishers. And anytime you can make it easier for your viewers to find your information, that's a big win. So making those programs repeatable and developing the collateral that we need in each area, we have a really good team behind us that can figure those things out.
So talk to me about the moment you realized you had product market fit.
The moment we had product market fit was actually at a major university here in the US, major research university,
Mhm.
that was brought to us by one of our partners, a transcription company. And they were manually building table of contents around their very technical videos, has to do with genomics. And the people who actually mapped the genome back in the 90s, they have a huge library, 600 hours of very technical interviews with the greatest minds in the world around genetics. And they figured out you needed a table of contents and they couldn't find it and they manually were doing it themselves. So then they found
Mhm.
us. Anyway, so we did a deal with them and then they are part of a state university. We had to we had to get through the contracting people and then the accessibility people. And that's fine. So we met with the accessibility team. And so lovely woman, she asked us to make a couple of changes to our player to be more
Mhm.
compliant with I think it's called a WCAG standard for making web pages compliant. So it
Mhm.
took us 2 or 3 weeks to do that. And we went back to her. We said, here, we've made the changes you've asked. We'd like to show it to you. And of course, this is during the pandemic, so everything happens over Zoom. And so she looks at it and then she says, my God. And my heart sunk. I'm like, my God, what? And she said, this is unbelievable for people with disabilities. I said, really? Why do you say that? She said, well, if you're blind, you use a screen reader. And with this product now, you can take your screen reader, read the summaries of the chapters, and then
Mhm.
decide, do you want to listen to it? And you can tab through it. And she said, this is a game changer like that. And she said, and if you're hearing impaired, if you're deaf, you have to read the entire transcript. To a transcript of a 1 hour lecture is probably 200 pages, and you don't know what's there because you have no roadmap. There's no GPS available for
Mhm.
it. And she said, and if you're learning, if you have like a attention deficit, you have some neurodiverse learning disability, you need the structure of the table of contents in order to stay engaged on it. And that's when I realized we were a fit. And then finally she says to me, Jeff, you don't have to have a disability to like your product. So I just kind of smiled. I said, yeah, I agree. Thank you so much. So that's the day I realized we had product market fit.
Amazing. It's this every time I hear somebody describe it, it's always this like kind of resignated, I get it kind of feeling where you just you could just feel it sinking in that there's a deeper level of understanding.
That, and I feel the weight of everything that we were carrying because we had a lot of investment, we had a lot of people's time, we had a lot of careers riding on it. And at that moment in time, I felt it lifted off my shoulders. I said, this is going to be okay. It's going to work out.
Amazing. It sounds like quite the journey. It sounds like along the way, or maybe a question for you is, did you start with the accessibility angle in mind, or was this something that you found along the way?
Accessibility found us. And my term is we make it accessible for everybody, including people with disabilities. But I can tell you from an investment point of view, when we pitched it as an accessible tool, it limited severely the number of investors that were interested in it because they saw it as a very small market and maybe some tough sledding from that point of view. So when we pitch it, we pitch it as accessible for everybody with a capital A. And then because you can find things, you can share things, you can navigate things, anybody can with Ziotag. And if you happen to have a disability, then all the more function for it.
Interesting. Well, thank you for sharing, Paul. If people are curious to learn a little bit more about Ziotag or your journey, what's the best way for them to learn more?
Sure. You can just come to our website. We have a good 3-minute overview you'll get what we do with our videos. These are AI generated videos. We have 2 spokesmen, Zach and Zoe, who speak for Ziotag, and then they do a good job. Anybody can have a complimentary trial of the offer to try it out. We work with all the major video platforms from there. The best way, just drop me an email at jeff@ziotag.com.
Jeff, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Collin, completely my pleasure. Thank you.
And thanks to everybody for listening. We'll catch y'all next time.